Hello, boys and girls. It's Aunt March celebrating Women's History Month. And I have a really important young lady that I would like to tell you about today. And many of you may have even heard of her already. Her name was Ruby Bridges. When she was small, her family was very, very poor. And they hardly could make ends meet, boys and girls. Sometimes they barely had enough food to eat. So in 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Her father got a job as a janitor there. During this time, children of color could not attend the same schools as white children. That was happening not only in New Orleans, but many places in the United States. They were not to receive the best education like the other children, unfortunately. However, in 1960, there was a judge that said 4 black children, 4 black young girls, could attend 2 elementary schools there in New Orleans, only 4. Ruby Bridges happened to be one of those that was chosen to integrate white schools. She was sent to the first grade at William Frantz Elementary School there in New Orleans. How proud her parents were that she had been chosen, because you had to be a really good student to be chosen. This was an important event in the United States history because it was something that was different, something new. Ruby's family thanked God for this opportunity. Her mother prayed and prayed that Ruby would do exceptionally well and that she would be a good girl in her new school. She had always done well in her old school, but now this was going to be more of a challenge for her. But something terrible happened on the very first day, boys and girls, that Ruby attended the white school. Do you know what it was? There was a huge gathering of white people, and they were angry because they did not want any black children going to their white schools. Some of them had signs that said really mean things about Ruby. The people called her names. They yelled at her. They told her that they would do bad things to her, like even kill her. How would you have felt? Do you think you would have gone on? Well, you know what? The federal government sent their marshals to protect Ruby because the policemen of the city did not want to be bothered. They didn't want to protect any of the black children going to the white schools. So the President of the United States sent some very special helpers to protect her. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. As Ruby went to school each day, the same thing happened over and over again. The name calling, the threats. The United States Marshals were, praise God, always there by her side to make sure that she was safe entering school and she was safe leaving the school. They took her in their car. The white people from the community would not even let their own sons and daughters, boys and girls, go to school with Ruby. They said, we will not have our children go to school where there are black children. So there was Ruby all by herself every day, month after month after month, just she and her teacher. She had nobody to play with. She had nobody to eat with at lunch. Each day, Ruby faithfully went to school, however, and each day the crowd was there yelling at her, but she always had a smile on her face. She always went in her classroom ready to learn. She sat down. She was polite to her teacher. She worked hard. She did what her teacher asked her to do. She made really, really good grades. Her teacher enjoyed having Ruby. She was delightful to have. But she too wondered, when will the children come back? And she was scared for Ruby. She would always ask Ruby, how are you doing? Because, boys and girls, that must have taken a toll on Ruby. But Ruby did not complain. She did not call other children or parents names. She just sat there with a smile on her face and did what she was asked to do. One day, as Ruby walked towards the school with the marshals, she suddenly stopped. And the teacher was looking out of the window and she wondered, what was Ruby doing? And the marshals kept saying, Ruby, don't stop. Keep going, keep going. But Ruby stopped. And the teacher could see that her lips were moving and she thought Ruby was saying something to the crowd. Finally, Ruby stopped talking. She turned around with the marshals and she went into her classroom. The teacher asked her, Ruby, what did you say to the crowd? And she said, I didn't say anything to the crowd. And the teacher said, but Ruby, I saw your lips moving. What were you saying to them? And this is what Ruby said, boys and girls. I didn't say anything to the crowd. I just stopped to pray for them. And this is the prayer that Ruby prayed that day and every day after, at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. She said, please, God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing. So could you forgive them? Just like you forgave those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. Wasn't that brave of her? Ruby continued to go to school. She continued to pray for those people that hated her and called her names. Well, after a while, almost a year went by, and a couple of the parents finally sent their boys. There were 2 white boys that went to school because their parents were tired of having them at home because they kept getting in trouble at home. So they went ahead and put their boys in the school. And then you know what the crowd did? The crowd began to yell at those parents, those white parents, for putting their boys in school. But you know what else? What happened after a while? Other parents began to put their children in school too. And finally, Ruby had classmates. It took some adjustments before they would play with her, but because she was such a sweet girl, soon she had friends. She graduated from that school, and she also went on, boys and girls, to go to high school as well. Now, Ruby did not stop there. Ruby is now grown up. She has a family of her own. She has 4 children. Now, I'll see if I can show this picture of what she looks like now. That's Ruby. And Ruby has set up a foundation called the Ruby Bridges Foundation, and they help other boys and girls. They help other men and women because they want to see everyone succeed too, just like Ruby succeeded. Isn't that wonderful? How brave was this little girl, just in 1st grade. I wonder what you or I would have done if we had been put in that situation. God gave Ruby the strength that even though people were calling her names, even though people were threatening her, even though people wanted to kill and hurt her, she still kept going forward, and she got her education, and she, along with others, opened up doors for other children of color to be accepted in schools of their choice as well. So we thank God for Ruby Bridges.